Tonight on Crime Stories.
Bundy was a master serial killer. It's not just a matter of a sexual drive. It's a matter of creating terror, fear in his victims.
I knew he was going to kill me. And I thought, no one's ever going to know what happened to me.
It was very interesting to everyone. You had a good-looking guy. You didn't have a creature out there.
He could not control the compulsion. If he could have, he'd still be free. I'll bet you.
On Saturday night, January 14th, 1978, while most students are either sleeping or just arriving home after a night out, a young man, calling himself Chris Hagen, walks through the entrance to Florida State University and makes his way across the quiet campus. With his keen ability to blend in, the outsider poses an ever-present danger to the pretty, dark-haired women he selects as his victims. Just after 2 a.m., the stranger slips into the Chi Omega sorority house, home to 36 young women. The predator moves swiftly and deliberately through the house, which is silent except for one young woman who brushes her teeth in the bathroom. He creeps by her and down the hall into another co-ed's room. His victims can't know who or what hit them. All are attacked while sleeping.
We got a call that came in that there had been a disturbance at the Chi Omega house, and we were just doing routine patrol around the campus. It was a quiet night, it was kind of cold.
1054, just a concerned citizen.
Police have no idea of the horror they are about to encounter.
I stepped into the house, and several of the girls inside were very distraught and were yelling, "Upstairs, upstairs."
One of the first rooms Officer Crew checks is Margaret Bowman's.
And I went over and I pulled the bedspread back, and I observed a young female, dark-haired. The head was large, distended. It was obvious that she had been strangled. I could see a piece of what looked to be like a pantyhose or stocking, something of that consistency, knotted around her neck.
The scene is chaos. Terrified young women scurry in all directions as police and paramedics try to establish order.
And then I started going door to door. And this room was Lisa Levy's. And as soon as I entered, I went over and touched her. She was almost room temperature at that point, and I knew I had another victim.
When it is over, 2 young women at the Chi Omega house are found dead, their bodies mutilated. 2 others are drenched in blood, their skulls crushed by the intruder's club, but lucky to be alive. Unbelievably, no one even hears the attack. But one sorority sister who arrives home around 3 a.m. catches a glimpse of the intruder as he leaves. Had she not seen him, the attacker may never have been identified. 1 month after the Chi Omega rampage, Florida police catch their killer. He tries to run from the officer who stopped his car.
Of course, after several minutes of fighting, I did manage to subdue him by striking him with my revolver.
A fake ID reads Kenneth Meisner, who is a swim coach at the university. But his real name is Theodore Robert Bundy, a vicious murderer and fugitive on the FBI's most wanted list. He is no ordinary killer. Smart, charming, with schoolboy good looks, Bundy fools his friends and mystifies police, all the while continuing to lure countless women to their gruesome deaths. On the outside, he appears confident and composed, yet just below the surface lurks a deeply troubled man.
Bundy basically was a sexual sadist who mastered appearing normal on the surface. I don't think Bundy himself understood the difference between Ted Bundy, the kind of charismatic Mr. Nice Guy, from the sexual killer that he actually was.
5 months after his arrest, the state of Florida formally charges Ted Bundy with the brutal murders at the Chi Omega sorority house.
What do we have here, Ken? Let's see. Oh, it's an indictment, all right. Why don't you read it to me? You're up for election, aren't you?
Mr. Bundy?
You got it, didn't you?
Mr. Bundy?
You told him that you were going to get me. He said he was going to get me, okay? You've got the indictment. It's all you're going to get.
In all, he is suspected of murdering not just 1 or 2, but over 30 beautiful young women in 7 states. The name Ted Bundy becomes synonymous with serial killer.
My chance to talk to the press.
Contrary to Section 78204 Florida statute.
I'll plead not guilty right now.
And your grand jury is being...
On trial, Ted Bundy rivets the world's attention like no one since Jack the Ripper. He becomes the personification of evil in the public eye.
It was very interesting to everyone. You had a good-looking guy. You didn't have a creature out there, an ugly creature. You had somebody that everybody could reflect on. I mean, you had mothers saying, gee, if my daughter brought that guy home, I'd probably like it.
Over the course of 42 years, Ted Bundy would have many names and wear many masks. He crafted his image as the ordinary man to perfection, but the truth was something very different.
Bundy was a master serial killer. If there was anybody who was a pro, this was the guy. He knew how to get victims.
And he knew how to trick them. Bundy attracted women using a number of ploys to entice his victims.
Here's a guy that stalked everybody. He never attacked a woman that he talked to for longer than 20 minutes because he didn't want to, he's afraid of that relationship beginning.
In one instance, he used crutches to give the appearance of being a harmless, injured man in need of assistance.
A serial killer, an organized serial killer for the most part, does not need a gun to control his victim or a knife or a weapon, because usually they're manipulating and conning their victim to the point where they can get them into a vulnerable situation where in fact the victim then is in trouble.
What he did was he would hit him quick. He would blitz them with this tire iron or whatever instrument he used to render them helpless.
One of the hallmarks of the serial killer is premeditation. They plan and they premeditate. It's based on fantasies that started very young in their lifetime and have grown with them throughout their lives.
Ted Bundy was born in 1946, out of wedlock, to Eleanor Louise Cowell. When Ted was 5, Louise met and married an Army cook by the name of Johnny Culpepper Bundy. Ted was adopted by his new father, and shortly thereafter, siblings arrived. On the surface, his childhood appeared normal.
His teenage aunt recalled a time when she woke up from a nap, and here is this adorable little elfin Ted standing there grinning at her, and he had taken the knives from the kitchen drawer and arranged the knives all around her body with the points pointing towards her body. So here is a child with aberrant fantasies going back almost to the beginning of his life.
As a youth, Ted Bundy was terribly shy. Often he was teased and made the butt of pranks by bullies in his junior high school.
People did not find me attractive or likable. I compensated for it by being seemingly aloof and arrogant and intellectual.
In high school, Bundy withdrew, covering up his emotional insecurity by becoming a promising student. His good grades got him into the University of Washington, where he began a program of intensive Chinese and, eventually, abnormal psychology. Here, Bundy continued to mold his public persona, feigning an air of self-assurance. In the spring of 1966, Bundy began a relationship that would change his life forever. He met a young woman who was everything he had dreamed of. Beautiful, highly sophisticated, and from a wealthy California family. But after graduation, she dropped Bundy. He was devastated. Bundy became possessed with an icy resolve. He lived in this Seattle rooming house and bounced from job to job. In 1971, he was earning money manning the phones at the Crisis Clinic, a suicide prevention and crisis hotline. Anne Rule, who was a co-worker for the hotline, remembers her young colleague as patient and helpful. She would later author a best-selling book about Bundy.
He was empathetic. He was sympathetic. He had a gentle voice. He was so understanding, and he was good at keeping people alive, which is ironic in retrospect.
At the time, Rule was an aspiring crime writer. As she would come to learn, beneath the facade, there were things troubling Ted Bundy.
I was writing for True Detective magazine at that point. He would ask me to bring my magazines down to the crisis clinic. He was studying how the police caught killers, probably to be titillated, but also to understand. He was getting a master's degree in sexual murders.
By then, Bundy was a convincing actor. He was deeply involved with a new woman who was devoted to him. And he was working for the committee to re-elect Republican Governor Dan Evans.
My part in the campaign was so insignificant, I'm embarrassed that I should be getting this.
Everyone who met Bundy seemed to think this smart, handsome man had a bright future ahead of him. Beginning in January 1974, a string of young women bearing an eerie resemblance to Bundy's first love, beautiful, intelligent, with long hair parted in the middle, begin to disappear mysteriously. On April 17th, Susan Rancourt is suddenly missing from Central Washington College in Ellensburg. Vivian Rancourt and her daughter Judy will never forget that day.
So her roommates knew right away something was wrong. I said, well, where did she go last night? I said, well, she went to a dorm leaders meeting and was on her way back to the dorm room and never came back.
This is where he abducted her. She had to walk through this to get to her dorm.
I would be obsessed with searching for her. She had a bright yellow ski coat. I would just look for that everywhere we went. I found myself looking in fields and ditches for this yellow ski jacket to stick out like a sore thumb. And I'd be able to say, I found her. And we looked for a long time.
That spring, women continue to vanish, all strikingly similar in appearance, but from different Northwest cities. Most from public places, a college campus, a tavern, some only steps from their destination.
The King County Sheriff's jurisdiction averaged about 6 murders a year up until 1974. We'd never seen anything like this, never in history.
On July 14th, 1974, a warm, sunny afternoon, 2 women vanish in broad daylight from Lake Sammamish State Park. Now, women all over the Northwest are gripped with fear. Several witnesses at the park that day report meeting a handsome man who introduced himself as Ted and drove a Volkswagen Bug. From their accounts emerges a profile of the suspect.
The police thought, no, kid, that isn't really his name. Of course, if you're abducting young women, you're not going to give your real name. But Ted loved games with the police, and he loved coming out of the shadows and almost daring them. Look at me, I'm right in your face. Catch me if you can.
Throughout the summer of 1974, King County police detectives, including a young Robert Keppel, joined forces with search and rescue volunteers to comb the 400-acre park.
Well, the first break was on September 7th, 74, when we found the remains of Janice Ott, Denise Naslund, and one more person, or at least one more person. Then, March 5th, 75, was when the first skull was found on Taylor Mountain. And then subsequent to that, we found the remains of 3 more people.
Ted Bundy didn't leave a lot of evidence for the police. He would put bodies into locations where nature, the weather, animal life would destroy the bodies, leaving very little for the police, dragging the bones around.
King County police are flooded with calls. Friends, strangers, boyfriends, even husbands are being turned into the police at the rate of hundreds a day. In October 1974, Ted Bundy's girlfriend calls. Panicked, She begins to piece important dates and events together and suspects her boyfriend may be the Ted police are looking for. She recalls that on the evening of July 14th, the same day the two women disappeared from the park, Bundy came home filthy, exhausted, and starving. He then took her out for burgers and ice cream.
It is not beyond the capacity of an individual like this to go out to commit a murder, to go back to the girlfriend, to take her out to dinner, and maybe present her with a little gift, a little necklace or a ring that he just took off his victim.
The name Theodore Robert Bundy is added to a list of more than 2,000 possible suspects. But just as mysteriously as the murders start, by the fall of 1974, they stop. Ted Bundy has moved to Utah, leaving the Northwest in terror, and the police as baffled as ever. Next, we'll meet the only living witness who managed to escape Bundy's embrace, saving her own life and becoming the first victim to finger Bundy in a court of law. In the fall of 1974, Ted Bundy moves to Salt Lake City, Utah. He enrolls at the University of Utah Law School. On October 2nd, 1974, Bundy's terror spree begins again. By the end of the month, 3 women are gone. Their nude bodies are later found savagely raped and sodomized, their skulls crushed by ferocious blows from a blunt object. On November 8th, Bundy targets his next victim, Carol Duranch, stalking her from the moment she arrives at a mall in Murray, Utah.
It was November 1974. I was 18 years old. And a man approached me and said, "Is your license plate KAD032?" And I said yes, and he introduced himself as Officer Roseland. And he said that someone had been caught trying to break into my car.
Posing as a police officer, Bundy asks Duranch to follow him to her car, where she finds it locked and untouched by any burglar.
And then this is where we came out right here and walked through this parking lot. I told him there was nothing missing, and he asked me if I would come with him over to the substation because they were holding the man that had tried to break into my car.
Bundy then leads her to what he says is a police substation. It is actually the back door of a laundromat.
That's where he said the substation was.
The laundromat door is locked, and so he asks her to ride with him down to the Central Murray police station. Duranch begins to get suspicious.
I asked him at that time if I could see a badge or some kind of identification, and he promptly just flipped out his wallet and showed me a badge.
Duranch is puzzled by the fact that the officer drives a Volkswagen Bug, but she gets in anyway.
I thought it was a little strange, but I just thought, maybe he's off duty, undercover.
Once inside the car, the handsome Officer Roseland suddenly vanishes. In his place appears a deranged murderer Duranch and the world would soon know as Ted Bundy.
And he pulled over and stopped the car, and it's then that I said, "What are you doing? Why are you stopping?" It occurred to me, that he wasn't who he said he was, and that something really bad was going to happen. And he grabbed my wrist and put a handcuff on my left wrist. I knew he was going to kill me. And I thought, no one's ever going to know what happened to me.
Duranch is able to open her door. She then falls onto the curb. Gripped with the fever of the attack, Bundy rushes after her, ready to deliver one of his trademark blows to the skull.
We fought outside the car, and I finally just broke away, and a car started coming towards us. So I broke away and ran towards the car.
By a stroke of luck, the victim manages to avoid his deadly grasp. But Bundy, enraged, won't go home empty-handed. Later that evening, he kidnaps a young woman as she leaves her high school play.
I just knew it was the same person. This person immediately drove away from me and had to find another victim. think that was probably my first reaction. Just, I was very lucky.
Nine months after Duranche's lucky escape, Ted Bundy is pulled over while suspiciously cruising a quiet residential neighborhood. It would have been a routine stop had Bundy not provoked suspicion with a phony alibi. When authorities find an odd collection of tools in his trunk, they suspect he is a burglar and arrest him.
Rope, ice pick, tire iron, handcuffs, pantyhose ski mask, regular ski mask, all in one little kit. Bundy once told me that everybody carries those things in their Volkswagen Bug.
In a short time, Utah investigator Jerry Thompson begins to suspect that this courteous law student is more than just a burglar.
I went to Ted's apartment and searched it with him. We had a missing girl up in the Bountiful area called Deborah Kent. Her body was never located, never has been. And there was a brochure from a play, and that's where she was that night. Her and her parents had played. There was a brochure from this Beaumont High School that I found on one of his shelves.
In the apartment, Thompson finds gas credit card receipts from Utah and also Colorado, where several women disappeared only months earlier.
We found where he had bought gas through this credit card in Colorado with the Volkswagen on the exact days of 3 of the missing girls in Colorado.
But Thompson knows he needs something stronger. He needs an identification. Guessing at a connection with the Carol Duranche case, he subpoenas Bundy to appear in a police lineup. Although Bundy has clearly changed his appearance, his hair is shorter, combed, and parted on the opposite side, Duranche picks him out immediately.
It was right when he walked out that I knew it was him, and I could tell by the way he was walking.
Ted Bundy is charged with kidnapping and the attempted murder of Carol Duranche. Now an accused felon, Bundy outwardly seems remarkably composed.
Surprised? I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. I've never been in jail before, never been arrested before.
In the fall of 1975, investigators from Washington, Utah, and Colorado meet to compare notes about Ted Bundy. They suspect he is a mass killer, but determine they know everything and yet nothing about him. On February 23, 1976, Ted Bundy goes on trial for the abduction and attempted murder of Carol Duranche.
I think the evidence spoke for itself. We had the crowbar or pry bar that he tried to use on Carol Duranche was found in his automobile. We had the handcuffs, which were taken off of Carol Duranche's arm at the time that she broke away from Ted. And the main evidence, as someone called in a book, the only living witness. We had an eyewitness, and she did an excellent job.
And, you know, there he was, just down there smiling. Some people looked at him and thought, oh, here's this nice-looking, intelligent man. It couldn't have been him. And I knew it was him, so I just stuck with the details in the story.
When she got on the witness stand, she was absolutely certain and very, very credible in her identification of Mr. Bundy. And there were some strange things going on in the courtroom. Mr. Bundy would appear in the morning in one suit and in the afternoon in a different suit, comb his hair in a different way. He was described in the media as a changeling. And it was very true.
By changing his appearance, Bundy may think he can throw off the judge, but his eyes give him away.
He looked different in all the pictures. His hair had gained weight, lost weight. But his eyes were just the same. They were just so cold and just no expression in them, just no feeling to them.
On February 27, 1976, Bundy is found guilty and sentenced to a term of 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison. The judge requests a psychological evaluation, which remarkably finds Bundy to be neither psychotic nor a sexual deviant, nor suffering any kind of character disorder. The report determines, however, that he seems to have a fear of being humiliated in his relationships with women. While serving his term in Utah, Ted Bundy's troubles continue to mount. Investigators in Colorado are increasingly confident they can link Bundy with the gruesome murder of one young woman in their state.
That pisses me off. Now that does piss me off.
Prison does not suit Bundy. In his mind, he believes he is innocent and should be a free man. With clever planning, Bundy proves himself right. On January 27, 1977, Ted Bundy is extradited to Colorado to stand trial for the murder of 23-year-old Karen Campbell. But Bundy does not arrive in Aspen like a man who fears facing a murder trial.
He was charming, he was inquisitive, curious, shifty eyes, always observing things. Whenever I was relating with him, I knew he had an angle. He'd ask me a question, where's that road go? I'd laugh. I said, goes to hell, Ted. Where's that road go? Same place. Don't work me.
Bundy informs the Colorado court that he intends to represent himself at his murder trial. Although he is inexperienced, he does have some legal training, enough that authorities allow him to do his own research in the law library in Aspen's courthouse. Bundy notices that on hot days, the second-story window of the courthouse library is left open. On June 7, 1977, Bundy waits until he is left alone for less than a minute, then jumps out the open window.
At 10:30 or 11 in the morning, I was phoned by the office saying, get your gun, Bundy's escaped.
Bundy eludes police for days. He hikes miles into the remote mountains and hides out in an unoccupied cabin. 6 days later, a delirious Bundy is recaptured as he tries to drive out of Aspen in a stolen car. Police think they have a drunk driver, then realize he is their fugitive. This time, Bundy is housed at the more secure Garfield County Jail in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. But Ted Bundy will not stay put for long. On December 30th, just weeks before his murder trial is set to begin, he outsmarts the police yet again. Shortly after the evening meal is served, Bundy stuffs his law books under the blanket on his cot and pulls himself up through a small hole he cut in the jailhouse ceiling. He wriggles into a crawl space and makes his way to another part of the building. A small opening leads into the closet of a jailer's apartment. When the coast is clear, Bundy lowers himself down and casually walks out a side door to freedom. Later, he steals a car and drives out of town. It is over 16 hours before jail personnel realize Bundy is gone. When Ted Bundy resurfaces 8 days later, it is in the college town of Tallahassee, Florida, home of Florida State University. Here, he poses as a graduate student and sits in on classes, soaking up the Florida sun and the stimulating atmosphere of a college town. It is here that Ted Bundy goes on a grisly rampage that shocks the nation.
The killer struck first at the Chi Omega sorority house. He clubbed and then strangled to death 20-year-old Lisa Levy and 21-year-old Margaret Bowman. At least one of them was raped. The killer came in from the night and then returned to it with an ease that has so far baffled police and left most co-eds here terrified.
The same night of the Chi Omega murders, Bundy attacks another woman, Cheryl Thomas, a dance student at the university. But he is getting sloppy. He leaves crucial evidence behind that will be used to link him to the brutal attacks.
Once down in Florida, knowing that people were looking for him, the stress got to him, the pressure got to him. Bundy started breaking down. He started coming apart at the seams. He was off on a killing spree with nowhere to go. He wasn't planning.
3 weeks later, Bundy abducts and kills his youngest victim, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. She disappears right in front of her school. Florida residents can't comprehend what kind of monster is lurking in their midst. On February 15, 1978, Ted Bundy is pulled over while creeping along a deserted street in Pensacola, Florida. He attempts to run. When he is finally apprehended, it takes days before Florida authorities realize who they have caught. During his first few days of captivity, Bundy taunts Florida authorities with a near confession. Recognizing that he commands attention, Bundy suddenly reverts to his usual role of denial and belligerence.
Sure there won't be any press interviews. You've given them out. I'm gagged, you're not.
The calendar will read your
I'll
right.
be heard.
Even after Bundy is indicted with murder and assault in the Chi Omega case, he remains aloof. When his court-appointed lawyers accept a plea bargain on his behalf, offering him a life sentence in exchange for a guilty plea, Bundy abruptly changes his mind, fires his counsel, and announces he will represent himself.
He denied everything every way he possibly could, loudly and often, and he portrayed himself as a victim of this machine of government that was going to run him into prison as an innocent man.
Bundy insists that he is sane and demands that his case be tried. Trial court judge Edward Cowart rules Bundy is competent and allows him to represent himself. In a macabre twist of fate, authorities are forced to allow Bundy to depose or question all the witnesses at the Chi Omega sorority.
He called in most of the sorority sisters, a lot of the police officers he deposed, some of our experts. Obviously, the witnesses themselves, especially the girls from the sorority house, were scared to death.
It became his show. And like they say, the old maxim in the law is that a person who represents himself has a fool for a client. And it's true.
Even from behind prison bars, Bundy manages to keep the world enraptured. But it is this desperate need to be center stage that ultimately leads to his undoing. On June 25, 1979, Theodore Robert Bundy goes on trial for the Florida Chi Omega murders. The entire top floor of the courthouse in Miami becomes a media staging ground. 250 reporters from 5 continents are on hand to witness a spectacle almost as unthinkable as the crimes themselves. Ted Bundy, serial killer, defending himself in court. In the courtroom, Bundy is lost to reality. He feels the eyes of the nation upon him, and he revels in the spotlight. He is famous.
My name's Ted Bundy.
He wanted to be a part of the team and make appearances in front of the jury. The problem with that was, if you're too clever, you appear to be a person clever enough to have done these crimes.
On July 7th, the state opens its case. The initial strategy of prosecutor Larry Simpson is to show the jury how gruesome the murders at the Chi Omega sorority had been. He produces photographs and eyewitness accounts of the aftermath. One of these is police officer Ray Crew. Bundy, clearly enjoying his role as attorney, moves to cross-examine Crew.
Morning, officer.
Good morning, sir. He bantered with the officer a little bit, straightened his coat up, and then asked a question which I think sealed his fate.
Describe the condition of room number 4, Lisa Levy's room when you entered it.
There was a large amount of blood around the top of the head and splattered on the walls. Her body temperature was way down. She was almost cool to the touch.
And you cannot recall any debris other than blood? Is that your testimony? Is that your recollection?
That's the best of my recollection, yes, sir. He seemed to be almost getting a vicarious thrill out of hearing me describing his work to him.
By coaxing Crew on, Bundy impresses the jury with the horror of his own alleged deeds.
There was almost a chill in the air in the courtroom while he did that. And frankly, it played right into what one of the theories was that I had in the case, and that was that whoever committed these crimes was a smart person.
In my mind, that was the point where the trial was lost from a defense perspective.
When the prosecution presents its main eyewitness, Chi Omega sorority housemate Nita Neary, who caught a glimpse of the intruder as he left the house, her testimony falls on an audience primed to believe the worst.
Is that man in the courtroom today?
Yes, he is.
Would you point him out for us, please?
And seeing her, I can see her, that man, pointing to Ted. And Ted's sitting there like, well, what's she talking about?
We, as a defense, needed to limit her testimony because she had been subjected to hypnosis, and her memory got better after the hypnosis.
The first time that you see this individual, tell me, where are you, and what time is it, and what day is it?
The inclusion of Neary's testimony is later challenged in Florida's Supreme Court. And while the court rules that hypnotically enhanced testimony cannot be used again, they uphold its use in Bundy's case. This exception has become known as the Bundy rule. Neary's testimony is damaging to Bundy. The state moves on to the presentation of the physical evidence.
It came into the courtroom on a floor dolly. There were all these boxes of stuff, and people waited. There was great anticipation for the unveiling of the physical evidence.
The state introduces its first important exhibit.
And I opened a small brown paper bag, a grocery bag, that had a pair of pantyhose in it, and maybe 100 shutters released all at the same time.
2 hairs plucked from the pantyhose mask match the man occupying center stage in the courtroom. But the single most damning evidence is yet to come. Bite marks found on the buttocks of Chi Omega victim Lisa Levy are compared to the teeth of the defendant, Theodore Robert Bundy.
During the investigation of the case, we obtained an impression or a model of Bundy's teeth, which could then be compared against the bite mark that had been left on the victim.
In my opinion, the only set that could have caused all the characteristics in the photograph of the bite mark would be number 2. The models of Mr. Bundy? Yes, sir.
It is the first time that a piece of real physical evidence links Ted Bundy to one of his victims.
I must have been 15 feet away from him, and he looked over at me, and he went, like, I have no part of this. What are we doing here, Ann? And I went down the hall and threw up, because I had to accept that this man that I would have trusted my little girls with, that I certainly was alone with so many times, was a monster.
After 2 weeks of testimony from 49 prosecution witnesses, the state rests its case. The evidence against Bundy is overwhelming. On July 24, 1979, the defense makes its closing arguments and the case goes to the jury. After only 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returns to the courtroom. Bundy shows no emotion as the jury reads the verdict.
As to count 1 of the indictment, guilty is charged. As to count 3 of the indictment, guilty is charged. Guilty is charged. Guilty is charged. As to count 7 of the indictment, guilty is charged.
On July 31, 1979, Judge Cowart condemns Ted Bundy to electrocution, twice, once for each victim at the Chi Omega house. Bundy remains defiant.
For I find it somewhat absurd to ask for mercy for something I did not do.
Bundy's mask of sanity is slowly beginning to crumble. On February 12, 1980, Ted Bundy is given another death sentence, this time for the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Bundy's only real chance to avoid the electric chair is to plead insanity. In numerous appeals, his attorneys try to prove that he was insane, both at the time he committed the murders and during the trial. But Bundy's monstrous ego counters their efforts.
Ted Bundy was considered sane under law in his trials, and eventually, of course, was executed for his crimes because he planned, he premeditated.
From death row, Bundy slowly reveals the details of his horrendous crimes to authorities.
He mentioned words like necrophilia. He talks about having severed heads at home with him at one time, 4 or 5 heads at home here in Seattle. He mentioned possession, control.
After the first sexual encounter, gradually his sexual desire builds back up, wanting to fulfill this other need to totally possess her, as it were, as she lay there because of a strangler there.
He enjoyed talking about himself and his crimes only in the third person because he was too smart to pin himself into a confession. Now, a psychiatrist would look at this and they'd say, well, this is multiple personality disorder. I think not. I think Bundy basically was a sexual sadist who mastered appearing normal on the surface.
In the end, Bundy does confess, admitting to the murders of 30 women in 7 states. He tries to use the confessions as a means to stay his execution, saying he needs more time to reveal all.
He probably thought that he could keep this ball in the air forever, and the state of Florida would just kind of forget about executing him. Another mistake that he made was misunderstanding the will of the state of Florida to end his life. He never did understand that.
Almost 9 years after his conviction, the state of Florida denies Bundy's final appeals and sets a date of execution. In a morbid death vigil, the nation holds a party.
It's time for him to go. And now I have a daughter that lives in Lake City, and I want him gone.
If he did to your daughter what he did to that little girl, where would you want him to go?
I'm saying that he ought to die. And all the ones that's over the honor protesting, even the judges and the jury, the ones that's all been against him and kept him alive this long, they should be done the same way as he's going to get it.
On January 24th, 1989, at the age of 42, Ted Bundy is executed at Florida State Prison.
Someone like that shouldn't have the right to live. After taking so many lives in such a horrible way, I think he got what he deserved, and not soon enough.
Ted Bundy was everything a cold-blooded killer is not thought to be. In the end, he became a celebrity, the most hated in America. His handsome, smiling face a chilling reminder that things are often not what they seem.
Why didn't you see? Everybody who knew him, I'm sure, went through that. Why didn't you see?
Over the years, Ann Rule has received hundreds of letters from women, young and old, who were seduced by Ted Bundy's enigmatic disguise.
Through knowing Ted Bundy, I realized none of us can really tell until that terrible moment of truth when he peels off the mask and you see the monster underneath. With Ted, only the victims saw that, and when they saw that, it was much too late for them.
I just think it was horrifying, years later to find out that he is the most notorious serial killer of the century. That I got away, I think I was extremely lucky.